right, next up, Kyle Dittmer. Kyle earned 2 Bachelor's of Science degrees from the University of Washington in Geology and Oceanography, a Master's of Science degree in Geology, from Eastern Washington University. He also earned the USDA Graduate School Certificate in Meteorology. Kyle was a hydrologist in the National Weather Service for 10 years. He now works for the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission as a meteorologist for the past 25 years. Kyle teaches part-time at Multnomah University as a natural science professor, climate change, science ethics, environmental economics policy, College of Physics, and now, new I assume this is, Intro to Environmental Science. Kyle served as president of the Oregon chapter of the American Meteorological Society from 2005 to 2009, and has been a national AMS and Oregon AMS member since 1999. This is Kyle's 24th year that he's presented his forecast at this conference. Ladies and gentlemen, Kyle Dittmer.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Hello, is this on? Yep, it's on. It's on. It's on. Welcome here, members and honored guests. It's good to see you here today. Glad you made it. So let me introduce you here to the rest of Team Dittmer here. So there's moi. There is Sparky the Ferocious. He's going to give the El Nino update. And of course, Bumbles. He's going to give the snow forecast here at the end. So hold your sticks. Right here, so you can see it nice and easy, right? Okay, so I'm going to have a little bit different information here compared to the other presenters. See, this might be a little easier here. So first off, I'm going to make a plug here for my day job. Actually, I have 2 jobs. I work at Multnomah, but also this is what I officially do for a living here. I work for the tribes, the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission. This is the largest Native American science center in the Pacific Northwest, one of the largest in the United States. We cover the entire Northwest and partnering with our federal and state partners doing salmon recovery. So looking for some good salmon, we can have to put you in some really good deals here. So I've been their on-point hydrologist, meteorologist here for almost 25 years, so hard to believe I spent a quarter century of my life with these folks. It's been good work here. So I always like to start off that how well did my forecast the previous year did here. So last year at this time I was predicting, if you look here at the middle column here, being slightly on the warm side for like early part of the season, November, December, then a little on the cooler side here by mid to late winter. Turns out it was actually fairly cold last November, December, and actually got even colder. So on a seasonal basis here, I was about -1 degrees, a little cooler than my forecast. So pretty good forecast in that regard. The precipitation was a little bit drier here than expected here. We got that big shot in December, and of course we saw that blast in March. And talking to some other colleague forecasters, BPA, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, one of the workers basically said this is probably the most screwball La Nina year ever we've actually seen. So probably would agree with that as far as from the hydro water supply prospect of that. But what about the snow events here? Well, last year at this time here, I made the bold forecast of having 5 snow events, 2 moderate-sized ones, 3 minor ones here. We actually only got 3, and of course the one in February was quite the major blitz here. But I was predicting an 8.5-inch seasonal total. We got 11 inches, so I was only off by 20 percentage points, which is actually pretty good for a really long-range forecast here. So I thought that was a fairly good success in that regard. And so I also forecast for Hood River because the Creek Lake office has a law enforcement office there in Hood River, so we patrol the river from Bonneville Dam all the way to McNary near Pendleton here, so it really it makes a big difference here. And so again, kind of looking toward near normal, a little bit of the cool side by late winter. Is actually much colder out there during the season than we anticipate here. Precip-wise, it was about 30 percentage points less compared to forecast. So again, this was a strange La Nina. In fact, we predicted a little bit above normal. On the water supply, actually came in less than that, which is kind of unusual here. And then government camp, again, looking here, was a little colder than expected. The precip definitely was below quite a bit here by about 35, 40 percentage points here. But look at the actual snowfall observed here. It wasn't too far off here. Only off here like about 14 inches. So only like an 8-point difference there. That actually is pretty good. How did my water supply forecast turn out here? So I was predicting about 123 million acre feet That's the official data that shows 1 acre-foot times 1 foot depth times per million here. We're about 122% normal here, and then the updated forecast here in April was 111. We only had like about 80 maps, so the water supply was definitely much less than normal, only about 78% normal, so it was a little bit on the dry side here, which is kind of unusual here for a La Nina year in that regard. Okay, so overview of my methods here. I actually use several environmental indicators here to put my forecast together here. First off here, you probably know, if you've seen these presentations of mine for 20 years, I always talk about sunspots. There's this thing about the solar forcing here. My good friend, Dr. Theodor Landscheid from Germany, who sadly died here 10 years ago, he came up with a model here and actually predicted as far as the solar forcing these ENSO events, both El Nino and La Nina. He made these predictions like years in advance, and even after he died, his last few forecasts, they all were like 100% accurate. So that's pretty amazing. And so also I looked to see what's happens here with the multivariable ENSO index known as MEI. It's actually kind of my preferred index I love to use here. I also take a look here at the sea surface temperature departure forecast, which NOAA produces here. So Steve here, that's why I didn't email my presentation, because I had to get this morning's latest here at 8 o'clock. So this is as fresh as your muffins and your hot cocoa. So I wanted to give you the latest that NOAA put out in that regard here. So my approach here is a little different than forecasting here. I kind of actually have like this two-step approach here. Is what I call the hydroclimate forecast. This is kind of like a blend of probability, the Weather Service says, but also looking here at a single trace deterministic forecast. So it's like a blend as well as an analog surrogate years. So it's kind of like an interesting blend of all three of those here together. So first off is that my first process is look at the relationship between MEI and historical Columbia River Dalles runoff going back during about the last 80 years, and they see this correlation between the MEI and runoff, and then I produce a preliminary seasonal water supply forecast. And I know the Portland Weather Office, your sister office, the Northwest River Forecast Center, which I was a part of for 10 years, they produce their own preseason forecast here as well. Once I get that forecast, then I back calculate and back engineer my winter weather forecast based upon the 20 best, what I call the best right years in that regard. And I kind of wince when I say right, because we have no idea which years are right until like a year from now after we go through the full next water year season here. So in this regard here, looking here at these 20 years, El Nino was a very key pattern. These were my surrogate or analog years that I use here. And interestingly enough, most of these are like moderate level El Nino events. I did have, I think, about maybe 4 actually strong El Ninos, because I did see Noah's earlier talking the other Noah. Your box. Big Noah versus little Noah. Okay, that's what we think is little Noah. So big Noah basically was calling for like moderate level El Nino here, but just to be on the safe side, I actually put in some strong El Ninos here. So you're looking here at like, the winter of 2016, and then we've got 1952, 1958. So I threw some strong ones in there just to kind of hedge my bets. We actually might see some strong El Ninos in that regard here. And so 17 of my 20 years here are El Nino events. I threw in 3 ENSO neutrals just to kind of get some little bit of variability in there. And then as far as the PDO phase, kind of an almost equal mixture of warm and cold, a little bit more on the cold side since we are in the cold phase of the PDO. So what I would do is look at the data from all those 20 years, add some data, come up with an average temperature as far as departure, both temperature and precipitation, and then the snow. So all 20, this is really the key driver here for my forecast here. So that's how I put that together. So let's look here at the particulars here. So first off, talking here about the sunspot counts here. So this is updated here. I actually know in conjunction here with NASA is that what Dr. Landscheid found is that when we are toward the peak of the sunspot cycle, we are more prone here toward El Nino events. And we're at the bottom of the sunspot cycle, we're more prone here toward La Nina events. So it's interesting, even though we're not going to see the peak of this current cycle, about maybe a year from now, it looks like it's actually either peaking out, or else we got like a really strong surge here. But looking back here at the last, 250 years, we've noticed that the peak of the sunspot cycles has actually been kind of on the weak side here the last 20 years or so. Normally they'd be like in the counts are like maybe between 200, 300, even 400 here. We've only been about roughly 150 counts here, so it's been a little bit on the weak side. Okay, so this is actually a little bit more updated graphic here. I just pulled this off here from Columbia here just a few days ago. They actually updated the October forecast here. So if you look at the burgundy sort of a tan brown line here, average of all the dynamic models here. It shows essentially, kind of being, within like the moderate to strong case here, as far as looking peak out here next couple months here. So even that modeling is suggesting it could be strong, but maybe some moderates here as well. So maybe the best way to think about it here is maybe a combination of both, moderate and strong level, depending. We'll see how this all plays out here. So this is useful to look at and see what's the ensemble here of the models kind of going forward here. Now, this is a slide I had an update here at 8 o'clock this morning as far as what is NOAA's Climate Prediction Center, as far as their sea surface departure forecast here. So the telltale sign of El Nino is we see these warm water departures here in the central eastern Pacific here. So I point your attention here to the upper right here, December, and then the lower left, January here. So it looks like this year's event will probably peak out here in December and January, which is actually pretty typical for a classic El Nino. So that is very typical in that regard here. And also another graph, actually kind of modifying with what Noah just talked about here, is that we've got these different levels. It's not just enough to say we're going to have El Nino. What level of strength is it? Weak, moderate, strong, very strong. And of course, it has fluctuated quite a bit here over the years. So, as far as for this particular winter, what can we expect here? So, Sparky's older brother here, he's going to show a few graphics here. Could it be like a very strong El Nino here, the Godzilla of all El Ninos? That's when I play the Godzilla theme. Or it could be like a weak El Nino, or it could be the one what I call the Goldilocks El Nino here. So not too strong, not too weak, but just right. So this is the part where I ran out of time this morning, but I'd love to dress Sparky in a little girl's dress, put some blonde curlers on him, and he'll say, "This El Nino is too strong, it's too warm, this one's too weak, this one is just right." It's a Portland thing, they're born that way. So NOAA's guidance, as of about a month ago, it's probably been updated here. Their models were suggesting that 8 out of 10 models were suggesting moderate level El Nino, but it sounds like the guidance has been updated here very recently, which unfortunately I didn't catch it. That's why I built in, 2 of the 4 models actually having strong El Nino, just to kind of hedge in that regard. So I was always kind of thinking for that, because El Nino is, just kind of do unexpected things. So using this MEI here, looking here at the top left graph here, so the black line is showing we were in La Nina territory here for 3 years. Now we crossed that threshold neutral. Now we are definitely moving into El Nino territory here. What I like about MEI here is that it looks here at the sea level surface pressure, the 2-dimensional wind pattern here on the surface of the ocean here, the sea surface temperature and the air temperature above it here, and a fraction of the clouds that are covering here, that part of the Pacific Ocean. So it's a weighted index here, but I think it gives really good environmental consideration as far as all the parameters going on here in the tropics when you're trying to figure out here these El Nino events here. So also in my analysis here, I do pay attention here to the Pacific Cable Oscillation. So this is like a really, really broad fluctuation of temperature in the north central Pacific here. And it really has been in the negative phase since 1998. There's no sign that we've actually flipped back to the warm phase. I point your attention here to the last couple of years there. Not only is it really strongly negative, actually it's even deepened a little bit more here, which is real interesting here. So the one thing that a PDO does actually, it will either enhance or dampen whatever sort of ENSO event is going on here. So since this is the cold phase of PDO and El Nino is the warm phase, the PDO will actually put a slight damper here on the El Nino effect. So having said that here, so let's take a look here at the water forecast here. So what you're seeing here on the colored individual numbers here are these 20 water years I just mentioned here. So the blue line is the actual really long-term average from 1929 through 2023. The red line is the actual forecast. So the shape of the hydrograph is very similar, except the peak will not be nearly as high. And this is what's called unregulated flow, which means if you take out the impact of the dams, this would be the natural flow of the river without the dams like Bonneville and Grand Coulee and so forth. And so flood control, bankful level down at Vancouver Harbor, that's actually measured as well as Portland, is 450,000 CFS. So basically it shows what kind of right below bankful here. So I don't think we need to really worry about any springtime flood flow along the Columbia or the Willamette here this season. So good news for us Idaho people. Okay, the forecast. Let's start here with Hood River. So looking here for near normal temperatures this winter, maybe slightly warm, maybe midwinter, January and February here, but all kind of within normal here. The forecast on the precip here is looking for a little bit dry start here in November here, being a little bit above normal here for December and January here. They kind of cut back toward the dry side here by mid to late winter, February and March. The snow forecast here for Hood River here looking about 81% normal. Again, looking at the average of that season of November through March here, with a seasonal total of 26 inches. Last year at this time, I was predicting 35 inches because of the La Nina effect, so it's going to be a little bit drier. Then as far as the specific monthly totals here, so again, the average of those 20 years here. So you see for like November here, 2 inches, and then using the standard deviation on the upper end here, that's where the up to 8 inches comes from here. So roughly 2 inches November, 4 inches December, January 15 inches, February 5 inches, and about ½ inch for March. So definitely keep an eye out here on December, January, and February, and January in particular here. It could be a little bit snowy there in the gorge here during midwinter. Okay, let's now move to government camp here. It's probably one of our better base stations. We like looking at the mountains. It's a real key concern here for the tribes looking at water supply here. So I'm looking here essentially at near normal temperatures, maybe a little bit on the warm side here for January, but essentially a warmish trend. Looking here on precipitation here, being essentially kind of like near normal here, between like 95 and 105% normal. The snowfall though, percent-wise here is looking pretty good. Looking to be kind of a robust November here, and then kind of cut back here like later on the season, kind of drawing out here toward the end. I think back to that, I think when George Taylor was still with us, I think he mentioned in one of his presentations that typically for a lot of El Ninos, you see like a very vigorous early season, like October, I think Mark Nelson's also has made mention of that here too. We have like this really vigorous start system, all of a sudden it turns like warm and dry. So we've kind of seen that here really the last 4 weeks. So as far as my snow forecast government camp here, I'm looking for about a 216-inch base or 91% of normal. So down a little bit, but still actually kind of reasonable here. So whether or not you want to go by season pass, it's up to you. This is actually not too bad for a forecast. So, in your interest, if you're on the slopes lot, you might want to consider a season pass. Okay, the last slide here, the Portland forecast. So on the temperature here, looking to be about near normal, a little bit on the warm side here in January and February here. The actual precip forecast, a little bit on the dry side here in November. Looks like we could see a little bit above normal here for December and January here, and then really cut back here on the dry side. So it's going to be kind of like all over the map this winter, kind of like this last winter. So that'll be kind of interesting to see how it all plays out here. I'm actually seeing like lower variability because we have kind of looking kind of like middle of the road, and maybe a little bit on the strong side here. I'm not seeing like a big variety of weather events here. We'll actually see some hard rain events, which you've actually seen here the last 3 weeks, right? And we'll probably see more dry spells and longer duration during that time. We'll probably see some fog, which we're seeing here already, and maybe a few wind guard events. But I'm really not expecting any major wind events. We're kind of like thinking one of these years we're going to see like a major windstorm, but I really don't think that's going to be happening. On the water supply, those 20 water years I mentioned here, so I'm looking here at 96 million acre feet, plus or minus 10, or about 94%. Now, if this happens, this will be better than this last year, because remember last year, even though it was La Nina, which generally is good conditions for the salmon, the runoff was really on the low side. We're only like about 78% normal. So if this comes to pass here, we'll actually get more water down the Columbia River in an El Nino year compared to, let's say, this La Nina we just had during this last year. So potentially, this is good news here for the salmon. Okay, what about snow events? Okay, this is where we do the drum roll. Bumbles is going to give the snow forecast here. And Bumble says, he and I are predicting here 2 events here. One moderate sized event at 2 inches, which of course will shut down the city. Because as you know, only takes 7 snowflakes to shut down Portland. And that's either 7 snowflakes in 1 hour or one over 24 hours. But 7 snowflakes will shut down Portland. So we're predicting 1 inch moderate event here, or 2 inch event here for the moderate one, and then 1 minor event about maybe like about a ½ inch. As far as when to expect it, so I think people are still waiting to fill out their snowflake ballot here. So for November, I looked at like maybe a ½ inch, when I really don't have high confidence in that here. About 3/4 of an inch here for December, maybe up to 2 inches. January, 2.5 inches. So it looks like January could be up for some interesting observations. February, only a ½ inch. And then March, about a 1/4 inch. As far as the probabilities, I've got a 35% probability assigned for November and February. And that's unusual for February because Mark has noticed several times we actually had a lot of snow in February in recent years. Whether that's part of a long-term cycle, we really don't know. But this year, it could be like really weak snow here in February, unlike this year. And then March, we usually see like 1 or 2 dustings of snow, nothing extraordinary. In November, it's kind of rare to see snow down here. We might see maybe at like Bonneville Dam, maybe Corbett, in November, but not too much here. One thing to know about Portland snow season, it's really from like mid-November to like mid-March here. But this year, according to my forecast here, the active season will really be like this December and January. But definitely keep an eye on January. I think that could be real interesting to see how January might play out here. So I got. So I also have. Let's see for for March. Yeah, March was about 50% likelihood. So again, we might see maybe a dusting here. So December and January, I have 70% chance likelihood. So again, keep your eye here in December and January in particular. That could be kind of like a big surprise here for all of us here. And as far as the seasonal volume curve of snow down here in Portland here, looking to be about a 4.5-inch snow total. So it might be kind of like a February event this year, we feel like get it all at once. Or maybe we'll split across 2 events here. So it won't be like a really big snow event here this year. Again, that moderate one, either December or January here, and then one minor one that I think will be done here for the season here. So, okay, that is it. Thank you so much.